Okay, recording is started. Um, you had a couple days. Did you think of any questions that you had about NVIDIA Ultimate?
About the Envidas, no? All is good.
Okay, excellent. That's good. Um, so we're kind of done with that. That'll be installed on the data logger and connected to the instruments, and it will be collecting the data. And then InVista ARM is the other package that you have. And the idea of InVista will be to collect data from ultimates. So the ultimates will get from the instruments, and InVista will be a central system that will collect data from those ultimates in the field. InVista can be installed lots of different places in lots of different ways. Like even on this PC, the InVista is installed on the same computer as the ultimate for the demo. Normally it'll be on a server somewhere, or at least another computer in the network. As we talked in the last meeting, you're looking at cellular routers with a VPN account set up, so that'd be good. InVista, just like Ultimate, InVista comes with many applications. This one is actually not part of InVista exactly. The several applications have different purposes, just like in Ultimate. So I'm going to go over each of these and what they do first, and then the rest of the session will basically be related to the reporting parts of InVista. I mentioned in our Ultimate training that the Ultimate Reporter and InVista ARM, so the Ultimate Reporter on the logger and InVista ARM are very similar applications. So getting some practice with InVista, you'll be able to take that and use it with Ultimate Reporter as well. The programs that come with InVista, the main ones that we would use are the Database Builder, InVista Setup, InVista ARM, Com Center, Send Alerts, and FTP Import Export, or Import Export FTP. The Database Builder, when you download updates to InVista ARM as a package, the Database Builder would be the first application to run. And you would really only run this once for the most part, because what this will do is update the backend SQL database and make it available for use with the newer versions of the software. It will add tables that are necessary. It will create and manage all those database objects that are required for InVista to run in its newest version. So when you download a package of updates, Database Builder is the first to run, and it's the most important in that case. The next program is InVista Setup. We don't really have this on the training agenda at this time, but it's a network configuration utility. So this is where you would add sites and stations, where you would add channels to those sites, and where you would manage the user access. So you'd establish a username and a password for somebody, and then allow that person to manage or use the stations in the ways that they need. InVista ARM is the reporting tool, and this is what most of the training today would focus on. So we'll go over that in some detail, step by step, for several different items. The remaining three, Com Center, Send Alerts, and FTP Import Export, they run in two different formats. The first one is as a Windows service. I don't think this is the services, but I'll show you. You can see, for instance, Com Center is here and it's set to run automatically, but it's not running right now because we have it turned off. Send Alerts and FTP Import Export would also be in here. They operate in the background. They run as a service. However, if necessary, you can double click on one of the icons. It will bring up an application form so that you could manage the collection process in Com Center's case. So this application would be used to connect to each of the data loggers and request the data from them. An example of the use might be to do a manual pull. However, this one is going to go ahead and pull for us. You can see that there's a trace. It lets us know what data is being collected and that it's been saved. And then it will proceed through the rest of the metadata data flows and verified collection of those. Trace is an important troubleshooting tool. And there's lots of nice small features in CommCenter. So if you lose connections for some time and you need to do a manual pull, you can go in here and request that data is retrieved from the data logger from a period of time that you've set. If you've done edits in InVista ARM and they're not good, they need to be redone, you can come in here and do a manual pull and overwrite the data that was previously in the database. This will allow you to start fresh with an edit session. You can get that from the logger or raw again. The other two applications are going to be used just a little bit less than CommCenter. Send alerts will transmit email alerts using an SMTP server. So if there's high values or low values that you would configure in InVista setup, those are sent through the Send Alerts program. So the way that would work is CommCenter would download the data, evaluate it for an alert level, and then send a signal through the database to Send Alerts, where it would pick it up and transmit the alert by email. FTP import-export is just a data transmission utility. So if you were to share data in one of your projects to an end user, we use this in the United States a lot to send data from the state government to the federal government. Maybe you would have an application for something like that, maybe not. Another example might be if a university was interested in data for review, things like that. That's the 6 basic programs that come with InVista ARM. There are others. We won't go through them in the training, but if you go to our FTP site and you see anything in the InVista ARM folder, it's probably available for use with InVista, and you can always ask a question. First, you can ask if it's included in the license, and second, we can see how you might be able to use it. So there's other applications. Any questions about those 6 applications and what they would do?
No, it's clear.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna actually open InVista Setup just to run through it. I noticed that it's not in this agenda that we put together. I think that's a bit of an oversight. I just want to spend 5 minutes to show you what it looks like more than anything, so that you understand how the reports that we will run in InVista are set up. So this is the InVista Setup program. It has a list of the stations in the air monitoring network here. So if you have a network that has 4 stations, they'd be here, or it could just be 1. In this case, the local ultimate demo is the station that we have an NVDAS set up for. So you can see the NOx, NO, NO2 are set up here. I think there were more. Oh, no, just those 3 are available right now. So those 3 match the 3 channels in InVista Setup. Each station has a lot of metadata available. Latitude, longitude, elevation, all those sorts of metadata points. The communication tab is important because this is what will establish how the data collection will happen. So you would put in, for example, an IP address and the port number for your cellular modem to collect the data there. There's the polling schedule as well, which is important. So this would collect every 5 minutes, day or night. Some of these tabs I'm going to skip just because this is a quick overview. Alerts, we talked about send alerts, how it would send alerts based on information that comes in. On the alerts tab of a station is where you would configure the alerts that you would send out. So you can see here, there's above alerts, below alerts, if the status is not good. A peak alert would be if there's a change in the value of the data by a certain percentage. So if it jumps, from 2 ppb to 200 ppb, you might get a peak alert. You could configure that. Constant alert means the data is not changing. This is very nice for wind detectors, especially mechanical anemometers, because they might get stuck. So if they stop moving, then you might know there's an issue. Correct data alert. This is good for manipulating the data as it comes into the system. For example, if you don't want any negative gas values, if that's a bad data point in your system, you could correct those to 0. In the United States, we correct things that are less than -5 and make them invalid. High counter and low counter alerts, they're basically versions of the peak alert that indicate when the data is high X number times over a certain period. So if there is high values over for 10 hours over a 24-hour period, then you could get an alert here. And then a rounding alert is kind of a new feature. I'm not sure what that one is. There's also station alerts, which are a little different. They can tell you if no data or no communication is happening to a station. This is helpful for troubleshooting. Once a network is set up, if the comm center cannot connect to a station, it can trigger a no communication alert, for instance. Just like the station, each monitor has several bits of metadata that you can put in, like the range of the instrumentation, the serial number, the tag number. Those are important. The calibration tab is not important unless you're using certain data loggers or under other circumstances. When you have the NVIDIA Ultimate Logger, the calibrations are recorded in a format that Envista already knows, so you don't have to manage the calibration. The only other thing that's really important in setup, I mean, there's a lot that's important, but the other important part is the users. So you can manage the system users. You can see here, here's our demo user login. And if we look at the roles for that demo user, you can see that they're able to manage all of the stations. Envista has a very strong security setup in that we could say that the demo user is only allowed to view station 3, station 1, and station 2. This would mean that they would not be available for editing. In Envista, there's 3 levels essentially of viewing. An operator can do some minor edits, but you can view or be an operator. They're mostly equal. Preliminary edit would be the first level of data value editing, and then a final editor would be able to edit the data that a preliminary editor has already worked through. So if you only have one person, it's best to set them as a final editor. And that can be set up on each station. This also tells Envista how to send the alerts. So the demo user would be able to get email alerts to the email address that they have configured here. So no email address, we wouldn't get any alerts, but if we wanted to, we could just put support@drdas.com in here, and then send alerts would have an address to send the alerts to. So that was very quick trying to get through Envista setup. Any questions about that?
No, it's all good. I have one question regarding the Envista setup.
Yeah.
Is when I added a station, okay, will the Envista will automatically detect what analyzer is connected in that station, or I have to edit each analyzer one by one?
Yeah, in our system, you do have to add each analyzer one by one. That's a design that we put through years ago, and we've stuck with. It's painful to set it up, but it's easier to maintain, because if somebody were to change something on the logger, it would make things very complicated to manage. So the changes here, we do them manually so that everybody's in the same understanding of what's happening in the system, basically. That's the bottom line.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so rest of the training will go over the Envista ARM tool. This is just a reporting tool. It has many, many air monitoring features, ambient air in particular. So the way our agenda is set up, the first thing we'll look at is how to log in. So you can go to File, User Login. Demo User is the one that we're going to be using, and I believe it's already logged in, but InVista confirms that the login is good. You can also log in by double-clicking the user button at the bottom if you need to change users. Once you've logged in, there are certain items in the software that would not be available based on the privileges that were configured and set up. So if the demo user were not able to edit any data, this menu would just disappear completely. In addition, each user is able to set up customized elements in the application. So this is a demo table of the data coming in from the local Ultimate. It's just a formatted view. If you have a larger network, a user can set up any number of these dynamic views that they want to monitor the network as it progresses. So if somebody were focused on ozone and then somebody else were focused on PM within the data validation team, they could each have their own configurations on these setups so that they could watch what's happening through the day. In addition to that, there are other dynamic displays. So this menu, much of it is related to how a user has configured their system. I don't think we have too much set up here, but you can do dashboards and charts, which are visual. They have nice displays to show gauges, windrows type things, current values, diagnostics. You can put pictures. So there's a lot of features that a user could come in and manage in a way that they wanted so that they could see the network in real time, or at least the most recently pulled data. They could see it and manage it the way that they want. The dynamic table, which for some reason did not update when the poll came in. Not sure why that is. That's strange. The dynamic table has several features. That you could right-click on it and view charts from all of the NO2 in a network. Of course, here we only have the one, so it doesn't do much. When you have a value here, if you right-click, you're able to see the calibration records, the zero span checks, the diagnostics, the digital monitors, those digital alarms from the instrumentation. There's lots of features within the dynamic table that you can pull in for each relevant. It's very strange that it hasn't updated though. Let's run a report and see where the data is. Maybe there's an issue. So moving on to reports, a station report allows us to see a listing of the data that's been collected by the InVista central system. So we'll start with 1 minute data. I believe the Ultimate, let's see. The Ultimate had 1, 5, and 60-minute data. So if we run a report for today, we should see data up to date, and we don't. So that is interesting. We still have Comm Center open. So, oh, I understand. It's still trying to collect this data from a long time ago. So it's in the process of getting caught up for some reason. We'll just let it catch up in the background, but I bet if we run an hourly report, we'll have data. So there we go. There's the NOx. Let's run another day so we get a full day. So NOx is coming in. The NO and the NO2 are not for some reason. That's might be a good troubleshooting subject to look at for training in a minute. But like with the charts in the Ultimate Reporter, if you just touch spacebar, you can go back and forth between a graph and a chart. The graph in InVista allows you to go back and forward through days. You can also pick the day from the calendar. So this is when the demo was set up on the 1st. and some zero data, and then we finally get some real values. If we wanted to examine this peak, we could double click on it and get the value just like in Ultimate Reporter. If I hold down Shift on the keyboard and I use the mouse, I can draw a box and zoom into that section. So that's nice for creating reports. If I push the R button on the keyboard, I return to the original state. And I can go forward and backward to review more data. Station Report has several other interesting features. Some of them are worth going over, so I'm just going to run through a couple elements because they show up in other parts of the application as well. So there's a from and a to time base and an average type. The average type, there's several different elements that are available. You can pick the max for the previous day. You can do a running average, running forward averages, highest values. So you could say, show me the highest 5 values over the period of time. The from time base, right now we're kind of stuck with an hour while it's trying to keep up. But the to time base can be changed, so you could have an 8-hour block average. If we were to run this for the NOx for a day, we would get the 3 values only because that's a block average. If we wanted to do a running average, we could select running average.
Complete, kind of complete, don't worry.
So if we ran the report with 8-hour as a running average, we would get 24 hours. Each of them is a rolling or running average. And the graph. The next, actually, I'm still going to do a couple things here. There is a criteria tab, so you could say, show me only the values above a certain value. So cannot do that with a running average, though. So show me the NOx values that are greater than 2, for instance. And if we say OK, I did something else. We only have the one value that's a 3. If we were to do greater than 1, we might get some 2s as well. There's a couple 2s. So if we don't want that anymore, we can click on the row and touch delete on the keyboard and it will go away. Status criteria, you'll notice that you see the numbers here when the data is good, and when we have that no data for the other, it said no data. But you might want to see the status itself. So you could say separate status columns. You should get columns that say OK. And that's the most important items on the station report. You can do accumulators, so this would be like a sum for rainfall. You can use the raw data, so if somebody comes into the system, performs some edits, the use raw feature would allow you to see the data before the edits. That's basically it for the station report, the basics of it. I guess I should say the period would allow you to start and stop at any end date and time that you wanted. So if you wanted to run half of a month, you could do that. Okay, any questions about the report generation, the basic station report? Okay. So a multi-station report allows you to select the data from multiple stations at a time. If you have only one station, it's the same as a station report essentially. But if you have multiple stations, you could browse through this tree and select various channels based on your selection. If you only want to see the particulate data that's in a set, for instance, you could click on monitor, the M, the M25. this would show you 4 stations, so that means that there's PM25 at each of these 4 other stations. So that's an easy way to look at the recent values or run a report for data of a consistent type in your network. A group report, a group is something that a user would set up for themselves as they log in. The setups for those are under the menu called setup. If I wanted to set up a group, I could add a new group, and we'll call this demo. Oops. And you just drag into that demo specific data that you want to see from the stations that you're able to view. I can go from multiple stations and collect different data types. It didn't make my name. Put that back in. It can be a 60-minute time base. We know we have some data for that. So I'll say save group. And now if I go back to the groups report, you can see the demo group is there and it lists the stations. So just run this demo group for the day. The groups are designed as a way to run a quick and simple multi-station report, basically, so that your users don't have to check many boxes each time if they have a big network of stations and monitors that they're looking at. The matrix report, I was trying to show this to you on the data logger, but here might be a better place. I can go 1 hour for the data, and I'll do monthly report, so we should have a few days of this data available to look at. And you can see now, this is where the instrument was not really connected, and we started connection for the demo at this time. So the columns are the hours of each day, and the rows are the days of the month. This is very nice when you get a full month of data, because at the bottom of this report, you're able to see an average through the day, and in fact, that is what the graph is. When you click the space bar, you'll see the averages and the max and the min for each hour of the day. So this will give you an idea if you have different things happening at night versus daytime over the course of a month. It can go longer than a month. That is the basics of a matrix report. There's different formats that you can do a matrix report in. You could do minutes of the day and things like that, but hour of day is the most common. Day of the month is another option. The matrix summary report is just another basic report. It should be visible here, so you can see some values and the edits that might have been done, and there are some statistics at the bottom of this that are not available in another report. I do believe this was created for a specific user, so not everybody uses this report the same way. There are other reports in InVista, histograms, index reports. I'm not sure if we have indexing, like an AQI or anything that we're going to be setting up or working with you on. Wind roses, we don't have any wind to show you, but the wind roses are a nice report to have. Parallel reports allow you to configure a report that would show you different days on top of each other. So we could say, let's look at the 9th through the 11th for the 1 hour NOx data, and you'll see that each day gets a line on the chart. So that's what the parallel would be. It would make the chart show you the days in parallel. A percentile would allow you to say that you want to see the 97th percentile of a specific parameter. So if I said NOx, I'm sure the 97th percentile would have to be 3. It's 3 there. Get some other important information, the standard deviation, the data capture percentage for the month. The rest of the reports up here, they're good reports to play with, but they're smaller, so we're going to move on to other items. Do you have any questions about the reports shown here?
No, regarding reports, all okay.
Okay. I'm going to go over the operational reports next. These are more basic reports, but they're related to the metadata, not related to the values of the monitors. So this is more how the Knox instrument is running rather than how the data itself is looking. You can see we're not really running any zero spans on the Knox analyzer, but this is what they do look like when they come in. You'll get a pink box if it's invalid, green box if it's valid, and it will give you hopefully good numbers when you have a calibrator hooked up. That's a basic report. There's lots of different formats. You can do multi-point, you can manage spans, precisions alone, just a lot of different options. Too many to go over, really. The alerts report would allow you to see if there were any of those high or low value alerts that you've configured on the station. I don't believe there would be anything configured here, but you would just get the station and the alert type. It's a good way to review what happened over a period of time in the network. Diagnostic reports would give you information about the instrument diagnostics. I don't think those were configured here yet for the demo, so that's something that's not available, but it would list the flow rates and the temperatures as collected by the instrumentation, and you'd be able to run reports and see graphs of that data. Again, one of those things is maybe the pump's going out, so a flow rate or pressure going down would help you identify that. Digital monitor status reports allow you to see if there's any instrument alarms. I don't think we have any, since this has only been up and running for a little bit, but you would just get a line, a single line to tell you that an instrument alarm has occurred. A status report will show you the status over a period of time for the instrument. So if we wanted to look at this, we should see a lot of no data because the month isn't over yet, and the rest of it's mostly okay. So you can see the Knox is split between the two, and then the NO and the NO2 are all no data. Better when it's bigger. When you start using the system operationally, and it's not just a demo, you get lots of different statuses available. So it can be very interesting. Communication, this will just tell you if communication has failed or if there were any problems. We haven't had any communication failures, so to speak, so that is a simple report. And the logbook that you saw us add earlier, it may or not be in here because it looked like the ultimate hadn't been pulling, but we can try to find it. Oh, looks like there's some stuff. So you can see here's a list of the actions taken at the station. These are editable, so if somebody messed up and needs to do an edit, you can double click and edit it. One of the recent, need to put that in. We don't have one. All right, well, one of the recent things that we've done to support EPA requirements is made it so that each edit to the logbook is a legally defensible entry, basically. So if there's an edit, there's now an edit trail. You can see every change that was done to a logbook entry. And I'll cover informational right now because there's only a couple things in here. You can see information about a station, basically what's configured at the station. And for the monitor history, you could see any changes that were made to the configuration of a monitor over a period of time. We haven't seen any here, so no changes to record. But if somebody were to go into InVista setup and change elements about how the monitor is configured, then that would show up as a record here so that you know the history of the station. Any questions about operational or information? Okay.
No, it's all good.
Edit's the last big chunk that we'll go over just want to make sure there's nothing here. Views just manage the windows. Help would just access a file. The manual, basically. The setups, like I said, this is where you can come and play with the dynamic charts and tables. And the tools, there's lots of different stuff in here, like exporting to Excel or reconnecting to the database. I guess it connects to the calculator too for some reason. Interesting. So the last thing that's a major subject is editing. As we talked earlier, there's really 3 levels of edit. One is essentially the viewer. They don't really get an edit menu at all. The operator can edit a couple small things that are available, like the status at a station. But then the preliminary editor is the first editor, and they are able to edit all of the data at the station to make sure that it's good. When the preliminary editor is done, what they would normally do in the system is create a validation record, which is done with this item, and that validation record would then tell a final editor that data is ready for them to review. So that 2 layers of editing and validation allows the data to be reviewed efficiently and then locked and prevented from further editing. So if a final editor validates the data, a preliminary editor nor a final editor are able to make any changes to it unless they remove that validation lock. So it's just a way to prevent data from getting mistakenly edited or mismanaged. And the validation settings are the locks that are put on the data that has been edited or validated. To do an edit, let's go to the edit table and we'll look at today's Knox. And we see that there's only a few values and there's 0. We could say that we know that a value shouldn't be good, so we could mark it as invalid. If we were to do that, we have to type in a description of that change. So you would just put in any description that relates to this. There are features allowed for a description list to be made, so you could manage a longer list of descriptions that you would put in usually, and then you can select them from the drop-down. But for now, we'll just type this and say OK. We'll save that change and go through these screens. These are just recalculating other averages if there were any others to recalculate. So now if we go back to the report, we should see that that first value is set. That first value is now set to invalid. If we go into the edit table again, that value is now this like pink color, and that tells us that somebody's edited the data. If this were an invalid that came from the data logger, it would still be white. But because we've edited, it's this pink color. And if we click Show Edit Info and put the mouse over it, we can see the edit description. So now we're able to understand how we've edited the data and who's done it. Let's say we wanted to change this value to a 1, so we can just manually change that to a 1 and put in our text. We could save that and go through here, run the report once again, and see now that second value is a 1. That's a lot of work to do if you have a lot of data to edit. So another feature that we have is the ability to select a group of data and right-click on it to open an edit block. So the data that we've selected here will come into this edit block, and we're able to do several different things to it. One thing that we could do is set it to a strict value, so we could set all of them to 1. We could calculate a linear equation with an mx plus b type equation. We could do a more complicated formula that involves other channels. So if we wanted to re-add the Knox values from the NO and the NO2, we could do that here. We can also set to a specific status. So we could set them all to invalid. And then there's more interesting and complicated features like an interpolated linear correction. When we check this box, we can add an mx plus b to the beginning and the end. This is in the event that you've done an audit of the data and it needs to be adjusted. What this will do is actually interpolate those linear equations across the data set. So that's an interesting one. Then we can add other coding and information as needed. For now, we'll just set this all to invalid. And it says that 4 changes were done. I can see here we had 4 selected in the background. So now those are all marked as invalid. Once again, I can click Save. And just double check and show in the report that that was done. So that's the basics of editing. If you wanted to look at the edit block alone, if you knew the data, you didn't want to go into the table, the edit block is available by itself, so you could come in here and select a station that you wanted to use it with. You can add filters to only edit data above or below a certain value. Set your date range. Again, periodic will allow you to set a start and a stop date and time. Once the data has been edited, the reports menu has a report at the end called raw versus edited and the edit history. So this is all in edit history. If we click data and we say the date of the data is today, and it's the hourly data, we'll see that there's a list of the edit actions that I've taken in this demo. So the first one was we changed the status, then we changed a value, and then we changed several status elements. And I actually did that backwards. The first one is at the end, and then it went to the newest. But still, the list is of each edit that we've done. It tells you what the old value was, what the new value is, who did it, what level they had, their description. So that's a nice report. And then raw versus edited would allow you to compare the data from both the raw table and the edited. So I'm not sure why we got it 3 times, but here's what we really want. You can see there's the invalid and the 1. If it's hard to see the differences, there is a feature here that says highlight differences, and it shows you each difference and each change that was made. So that's very nice. Once a data validator sees that and wants to lock the data, they can go back to the edit menu and complete a validation of the data. So if we wanted to validate data, for the first 6 hours of today, for the Knox, we could select that and click Add. So this would insert a validation, and if we look here now, we can see that we are the ones who have validated that data set, and now it cannot be edited by anyone. So it's locked, the data is secured, and somebody would have to come in and delete that validation in order to change the data again. So for that, we would go to Edit Validation, find the validations listed for Knox, and I must have picked the wrong day. So now we see this validation here, and at the bottom, we can remove it. Only a user of the same privilege can remove a validation. So a final editor can remove a final or a preliminary, but a preliminary editor cannot remove a final. So we can remove that, and now it's gone. So the data would be unlocked and available for edit again. That was a very quick crash course on the editing. Do you have any questions?
No, it's good. No questions.
Good. Lots of other features here, like the calc average would allow you to recalculate data if you've done an edit. So if you were to edit the 5-minute data and you wanted to recalculate the hourly data from your edits, you could do it with the calc average. The quality assurance those alerts that we've set up and that were in send alerts, like the high values and low values, quality assurance would allow you to run that again after you've edited data. So if you edited data for the whole month and you wanted to see alerts for what data was still high values, you could run this and it would generate the alerts again and send them out. Delete data does allow you to delete data. This is useful sometimes if you've done a series of edits and something happened and it went wrong. You could delete the data and re-pull it from the station. Data calculation and translation is actually, I think only we would ever use it. It's not even an important feature for us anymore. Calibrations can be edited or added manually. So if you do an audit on a station, that could be added as a multi-point calibration, where you would put in the reference and the measurement for each level. This can also be added in the Ultimate Reporter at the station. You could just select audit to say that you have done an audit on the station. And there's some extra EPA items available there. Copy raw data is another way to recover if your edits haven't gone the way that you like. And then copy monitor data allows you to move the data from one station to another if you're reorganizing your network. And the last item is edit database. This really just lets you see some data tables and change some descriptions. So, or actually, this one. So if the invalid, if you don't like that it's missing the A, you can double click on it and edit it. So we can just change that. So now if we run the report, it should say invalid for those records. That's pretty much it in the reporting tool. If you don't have any questions, I think if there's 10 minutes left, I'll just show you how I'm going to try to fix that data that's missing, and that'll give you an idea of how we use the system and troubleshoot something. It shouldn't take too long. It's probably a simple mistake somewhere. I'm going to start with the data logger, and I see that the NOx, NO, and NO2 are channels 1, 2, and 3, so we know that. I'm going to run a report on the data logger to make sure that the data has been saved. So this is Ultimate Reporter. Ultimate Reporter will tell us that the database that stores the data for the logger has the correct information. And we'll do it for this one. So what we want to see is that all three channels have similar data. So we have 3 channels worth of data coming in to the logger. So that means that the problem is somewhere in the configuration of the central system. So I'm going to look here, and I see that we have channels 1, 2, and 3. This is interesting because this is definitely the problem. The way that the Ultimate works is that PLC addressing, so the address here of number 1, would normally go to channel 1 unless there's a different number in this PLC address field. So I'm going to close this, sorry. So that being a 3 means it's actually pulling in the wrong data point. So I'm going to do PLC address of 1, and then I'm going to change this one to PLC address of 2, and this one to 3. Okay, so that one doesn't need a change. Now that I've saved that, I'm going to close Comm Center, even though it's trying to pull a bunch of data. And we'll reopen it so that it reads that new setting, similar to Envista Ultimate. So now that we have it open, I'm just going to stop the auto poll so that we can do a manual poll. Stop. Okay. So we'll do a manual poll of the local ultimate demo. And we'll just do it from the first, since that's when we saw that the real data was basically starting. We'll overwrite the old data. And I'm just interested right now in collecting that 60-minute value. So you can see the 60-minute data comes in pretty quick. I mean, it is on the same computer, so it should come in quick. But over a cellular network, it's pretty much the same speed. Okay, so now that we have that data stored, if we come in and run another report, hoping that it's changed. So we'll do all of these for the month. And now we have the data in the central system. So I didn't intend for that to be a part of the demo, but you saw a little bit of troubleshooting too, and what to look for if something like that happens. All right. If you don't have any other questions, that's basically all we had prepared. So I think our next steps would be that you're going to spend some time in the demo system. I sent you the credentials, I think. Or did Andrew send those to you?
The credentials, no, I haven't received
Okay.
it.
Okay. I will make sure to get those to you today before I leave.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You can spend some time in the system and work with it. If you have any questions about it or any you need anything from me, let me know. I can log in and fix anything like that NO-X, NO, NO2 that was messed up. Happy to do that. And then I think that we were going to work with do another training with a larger group. Is that how it was intended to be?
Yes, I think this will, the larger group training is when we will complete the installation and the commissioning of the system. So we'll do a larger group training for the end user.
Okay, and so that larger group training, you'll be there as well?
Yes, I'll be there. We will be approximately 4 persons, me and 2 from the end user,
okay,
and 1 from us, another 1 from us.
Okay, so I think we were going to do basically the same training. Once you're familiar with it, then we can do the training as a group, because the end user is your customer, right?
Yes.
So it's going to look good for us to present it together, so to speak.
Yes, of course.
So that'll be a really nice training session. We'll cover the same material, and we'll put aside a couple hours to do it, or maybe we could do it in 2 sessions like we've done here. Hopefully we can do it all in 1 session.
We can do it all in one.
Okay, that sounds good. Do you know when that might be coming up on your schedule? When you're going to have the install?
I think I'm going to have the install not next week, after it, I think.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I'll stop the recording and we'll go those recordings to you, or put them on our FTP site for you to download. That'll give you a chance to relive the experience, and then we can go from
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Well, that was fun. I'm glad that we got